Hey there. So in this video, I want to talk about how grief, it found me again. You see, I began writing my newest book, Age Out Loud. And not just because I felt that it was something I believed in, that as we age, we can still celebrate vitality. It was because I was really committed to helping others. That's really what my calling in life has been. Because I want other people to experience strength and vitality and holistic resilience that comes even through aging. Because we can choose to live fully, no matter our age or our stage of life. Because I had lived that truth and I continue to live it. And I had built a life and a business that was all around being strong in the body and inspiring others. Because people told me that. I heard that a lot. Kate, you're so inspiring. Kate, I don't know how you do it. And I was grateful for that. I'm grateful for that. But as I wrote, something inside of me began to stir. It was like this quiet knowing. And I would almost describe it as like a heaviness. It was like I'm pressing on the edges of me. And I was like, something is missing. Something is missing in the words, in the message, in me. I've spent much of my life being strong. Not to prove something really, but because, I'm going to be honest with you, I had to be. When my brother was murdered, I became the one who, stayed together in my big family. And when my son Will died by suicide in 2017, I had to carry the weight of everyone around me because everything was chaos. And through the addiction and mental illness that basically is surrounded and woven through my family, for generations, to be honest, I learned very early on that in order to keep standing, I had to be strong, but also keep moving when everything else was falling apart and falling around me. See, that's the kind of that's what happens when you have to build an armor. And it may look like strength, and it was for me, and it is for me now. I'm not going to knock that. But inside, I felt at this point recently that I was unraveling. I was tired, well, not of life, but of having to hold it all together neat and tidy. Because for so long, I thought strength, I guess, meant being unshakable, certainly courageous, and I do believe I'm that. But I didn't want to hold myself together just to give the pretense that I was holding everything together. And I was falling apart inside in a little way. See, I wore resilience like armor, and people admired that. They saw the drive, they saw the discipline, they saw the zaniness, they saw the inspiration and the energy. And at the same time, you're amazing, Kate, but that never resonated with me. But what they didn't see were the nights, I would cry, not wanting to worry anyone, not wanting to worry my mom, because they didn't see the exhaustion really that comes from being the one who always has to keep it together, the strain in myself and in my relationships. And I didn't show it because somewhere along the way, I decided that love meant, holding it all together. To be loved, no matter what, was to hold it together. And what I didn't know then was that true strength isn't found in holding it on together. It's found in the moments you finally let go. I felt like I couldn't do that. So let me just give you a story. Last month on our early morning walk, I saw a flyer, and it was for a grief summit. And I was like, it's being held at a church nearby here where I live in Atlanta. And something in me whispered, you gotta go. So when I walked into that packed hall, it was packed, hundreds of people. I didn't know necessarily what to expect, but what I found was a sea of people, hundreds gathered together, not pretending or performing or any of that, but really just showing up as they were in the mess. There were tears and trembling voices and laughter and silence too, of course, but mostly there was honesty, there was truth, there was vulnerability. And for the first time in years, I didn't have to hold it together. I was in a room full of people like me. Like me. I sat there among strangers who somehow felt like family, to be honest. And in that room full of people, full of humanity, I felt the weight I'd been carrying begin to lift. And in that packed room, I stood up. I raised my hand and I stood up. And I told my story. I was witnessed. And the relief I felt, honestly, was immense, because I don't know, something about in that moment, I realized I wasn't alone. I wasn't alone. And neither are you. So the main facilitator that day was David Kessler. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's one of the world's most well-known grief experts. And he actually worked with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross on a book called On Grief and Grieving, and also his newest book, Finding Meaning, which I'm reading now. And so I had read some of his work before, I'd heard of him, but actually listening to him speak, it was so different that day. You see, his presence, he was a master coach, to be honest. He was so calm, his message was so simple, and his compassion for others was so unwavering. And I remember what he said here. He said, we can't heal what we won't feel, but we don't have to heal alone. Oof. Those words landed like truth I've been circling around for years. And after that summit, I remember sitting out in my car and just quiet for a long time. I felt undone in a way, like unraveled, just gentle tears down my face. And I felt it. I felt grief, not as a wave or a storm or something I had to battle, but it was a gentle feeling. It's as though it tapped me on the shoulder and was whispering, hey, Katie, you can rest now. You don't have to do this alone. Oh my goodness. That's when I knew that there was another book that I had to write. I was meant to write. I was meant to do the work and be with people. I was meant to serve people through grief and hardship. And I always felt, and that's much of what I do as a coach, even though I don't say it out loud. So in the weeks after that day, in the last few weeks, I noticed something new in myself. I stopped rushing. I stopped feeling like I had to explain myself and my ADHD and my quirkiness. And I left tears come a lot. I cried a lot. And instead of trying to explain it away, I started listening to it. And I even started talking about it with people. People were like, how you doing? And I'm like, I'm not great. And they'd be like, what? You're not great? I'm like, no, I'm not that great. And the people who wanted to listen, who weren't shocked, listened. There's some people that were a little bit like, whoa, I'm not used to that from you. And I don't know, something about the grief, it wasn't asking me to be less. Like, I felt like I was actually just more. I felt like I was more authentically myself. And in that honesty, I started to feel lighter, more whole and more human, more fragile. And like I was saying, I started telling people. And I was writing this book, and Grace and Grief, and telling people about it. And the conversations were different. I felt different. And I was unsure of that feeling. And that's what I realized. It's grace. Grace feels like that. Grace is that quiet sense of peace that I wasn't used to. Because I wasn't planning on writing Grief and Grace. I really wasn't. In truth, I was resisting this book, kicking and screaming, no! Because writing it meant actually facing everything I had held at bay. The pain, the confusion, the exhaustion, the ripping grief. Decades spending being strong. But when I finally let go, when I finally let grief say, hey, it's okay, I realized it wasn't here to destroy me. It wasn't the assassin. It was here to guide me. It was here to guide me home. So through a lot of tears, and some silence and lots of writing. I found something that has been missing from me for a long, long time. That along with my strength, my tenderness. And writing this book has been both honestly heartbreaking, exhausting, really healing. Because grief, when you fully meet it, it reveals something that's most sacred in us. The love that remains, my love for Will, the meaning that it endures, the grace that refuses to leave, that's available at any moment, is still there. So after the summit, I chose to deepen my path, as I was saying. I began studying directly. I'm so lucky to be studying directly with David Kessler through the Grief Educator Summit. So I'm going to get a certification in grief education along with my spiritual direction certification and all my coaching certification, which I have a ton of it. And I'll be adding restorative coaching into my work as well. Because I now know, honestly, that grief isn't something to fix. And I'm not afraid to be in grief. I'm not afraid to be with other people in it. It's something to witness, and I'm honored to do that with others. And you know, those of us who've walked through it, like, we can literally help others feel less alone, to hold their stories with reverence, and to remind them, to remind you if you are feeling grief, that it's not about getting over it. It's not about getting over it. It's about living with it. It's about living with what's been lost and what's beautiful about what we've lost, and the act of grace, letting grace in. And again, I say this, I didn't set up to write this book, but I believe it was waiting for me. It was waiting for me, because when I finally stopped holding it all together, being that tough girl, the grit girl, grief found me again. And grace was right there beside it, whispering, "Oh gosh, you're not alone, Katie. You're not alone. You're home." So if this video resonates with you, reach out to me if you'd like some more information around restorative coaching. And if you'd like more resources or connections around grief, please, again, reach out. I'm here for you. I'm Kate McKay, and I'm so grateful that you're with me on this journey.